Hey there guys, welcome back, ARTFX Studios. This is another bass design video. Today I want to talk about something experimental, I guess. I was trying out some different interesting things on the bass that I normally don't do. And I got something interesting. So I'm going to play you this. This might be pretty loud. So 3, 2, 1. So there's a lot going on in that, and I want to talk about that. I've got a couple of different versions of this, but this is the main one. Now, I disabled all the effects on here. There's like nothing on here. We have the main patch and the sub patch. I'll disable the sub for now. This is the actual patch inside Serum. Now, I've also got a bunch of modulations already going on. You can see those right here. And this is the actual patch. Now, there's quite a lot going on in the patch itself. So, I'll just turn it all off for now. Like that. So, I started out with the Squelchy 1 oscillator, and as you can see I'm doing some modulation using LFO number 1, and I made this particular shape, and I'm automating the WT position and the asymmetrical. Now that's cool, but I'm doing a whole bunch more, because if I actually open up the automations, you can see I'm doing a lot of automation on this. There's quite some modulation going on, and these knobs are actually modulated, I think. So that's the WT position. Yeah, the WT position right here. So that's this particular one. And the asymmetrical is this one, which is the one above it. So this is controlling the WT position, and this is controlling the warp knob, so that one. But at the same time, they're also controlled by LFO 1, so that's how I really got a pretty interesting modulation going on. Now, just that sounds like this. And I don't know if you're able to hear this, it might be really quiet. I'll enable the compression for now. I guess that works. So that's just a bit of compression on there. Brings the volume up a bit. Now, I then decided to reinforce that with a saw wave. So I actually just added a saw wave. Haven't really done much to this one. Just makes it a bit heavier, I guess. And the next thing I decided to do is add some filtering. So I went in and I decided to go with the Foreman filter. Now, I don't use the Foreman filter that much, but I found it sounded pretty cool. So I first had the mix at 100%. And you can see I'm automating the cutoff and the format knob. And they are, again, also modulated by LFO number 1. Now, I found this was a little bit too much, so I actually brought that mix down to about 44-45%. It actually lets the dry signal without the Foreman filter on it come through a little bit, and then the Foreman filter signal is actually layered on top of that. So we sort of like get the best of both worlds. We get the best of the Foreman filter and the best of the main sound without the filtering. So that's pretty cool. And that's it for this whole first tab. Then I went into the effects tab, and here I'm doing, well, yeah, quite a lot of stuff. The first thing I decided to add is a little bit of the dimension expander. So I brought the mix on the hyper down, and I brought it up on the dimension expander. Also brought down the size a little bit because by default it's quite high. This just makes the sound a little bit wider. And the difference is really small. Now the next thing, because I wanted to make this even wider, I decided to add the chorus effect. Now, the chorus effect, if I bring the mix all the way up, sounds like that. And how I achieved that is I brought the feedback down all the way. I brought the low pass filter up all the way, so we don't get any low pass filtering right now. The delay is brought down for both of them. And the depth is also brought down, so we don't get as much chorusing going on as when we would put the depth at the maximum value, what it is by default. So I actually just decided to bring it down, and I sync the rate of the chorus to the BPM, which then I used a rate of 1 bar. So then bring that mix down to about 30%. Just makes it slightly wider. Now the next thing, and this is a big part of the sound because this actually really brings up that level and really adds a lot of harmonics, I decided to add some distortion. I'm using the sinus fold option right here. I've also enabled the filter on high pass, and I'm high passing it, well, just above 100 hertz. I felt like without this, the low end usually triggers the distortion easier than the high end, and that's usually because the low end is louder than the high end of your sound. So if that low end is much higher in volume than the high end, it will trigger the distortion, and that's not something I want. I want that high and mids to trigger the distortion. So you can enable that filter and basically just high pass it so that we don't have any of that low end. And you just got to play around a little bit with the resonance, which is this one. So just play around with that and play around with the filter frequency position so that you can basically just take out most of that sub that will easily trigger the distortion. And by using that resonance, still get a pretty good bass response. Now, I'm layering it with a separate sub, so I don't mind if I lose any of these sub frequencies right here. Now, if I enable this, and I think we might get some more volume again now. Yeah, so that's a big difference. Now, we also get a lot of high frequencies right now, and I basically solved that by using a notch filter. So I added a notch filter, and this notch filter is also using a little bit of modulation on the cutoff, from the notch, but it's really slight. It's not nothing big. So I think without this, it would actually pretty much sound the same, to be honest. But I'm using that notch filter to basically scoop out a little bit of frequencies. And I'm also adding quite some of that fatness knob, which just brings up the level a bit and saturates it without creating too much additional harmonics, while the drive actually creates a lot of additional harmonics when you crank it up really high. So with that notch filter, we sort of like lose a little bit of that high piercing mids or highs, and we get a little bit more of a bassy kind of feel. So the next and final effect that I decided to add is the multiband compressor, and I played around with the settings until I got something that I liked, and the level also came up a lot with this step. which is also what I want. And we get back a lot of those high frequencies again that we took out with the notch filter. So I had to do some more stuff after this. Now, I decided to layer that with a separate sub. And I think, yeah, I have a high pass EQ right here to basically make sure that there's no sub coming from the mid layer. Just cleans it up a little bit, ties everything better together. And then I basically went haywire with effects, I guess. I decided to try out stuff that I haven't been doing for a long while. And the first one in the signal chain is Sugar Bites Wow 2. Now, I basically just scrolled through the presets and I came to this Snarling Menace preset. And I decided to customize that one until I have something that I like. I automated the cutoff position, this one, and the resonance, that one. And I automated those. Now I have to look up which ones those are. Okay, so this particular one is the cutoff, and this is the resonance. Yeah, that's the resonance. So I'm just bringing down that resonance at the end, most likely because the resonance introduced some feedback, I guess. So I just automated that to bring it out. Now, you usually get feedback when you use comb filters, especially when you use a high resonance setting. Now, this resonance isn't really that high, but I still got quite some of that feedback. And I didn't want that, so I just automated the resonance to basically cut out as soon as the sound is over. It's a little bit of a tedious task if you need to do that for every single MIDI clip in your project file. But if you gotta do what you gotta do to make it work, then that's what you gotta do, right? So, I'm not gonna go too much into detail about how Wow Filter works. There's plenty of videos about that. I just can show you that I decided to use a comb filter. Dry wet is about 50%. Volume is quite low. I'm using the sine distortion method, as you can see. And I'm using a pretty low resonance. There's a little bit of resonance being added into the sound. Then I also enabled the mouth filter, the formant filter actually, by doing that. And you can see which vowels I'm choosing, the U and the O vowel. And that actually creates a really interesting sound. Now, without the vowel filter, this sounds like a really comb filtery kind of thing. Which still sounds good, by the way, but I added the vocal filter, the vowel filter. And it really makes it sound, I don't know, quite interesting. It gives it even more formant qualities, because we already had some formant stuff going on in it inside Serum. And I thought, why not add some more formant kind of movement? And I think this works pretty damn well. Then the next step is some EQing because of this comb filter and because of the comb filter and the formant filter that we're doing inside Wow, we're getting a lot of high frequencies. And I decided to bring those down a little bit simply with an EQ. Just brings down those high frequencies a little bit. The next step is a low pass filter. Now I'm automating the cutoff position again, and let me see where it is. It's this one, so it's the third one, this particular shape. So we're going up first and then down, and then we're slowly going up again to create that kind of sound. And that is then layered with another auto filter, and I'm only using this auto filter on the start of the sound. So let me see. At least I think. Yeah. So this is the movement on the filter cutoff of the bandpass, because the second filter is a bandpass. And this is the movement on the filter cutoff. This movement, you can basically forget that, because this one will basically control the bandpass filters on and off switch. So right here I'm getting bandpass filtering, and right from here the bandpass turns off. So here we are only gonna get that low pass filter. So what that does, I did that because without the bandpass, I found that the start of the sound had just didn't sound interesting enough, basically. So I added an additional filter, but only to that first part of the sound. And that really makes it quite interesting. Next thing I did is I added some multi-band compression on the lows, the mids not too much, the highs quite a lot. No, the highs just a tiny little bit, and on the master, really bringing that up in volume. And I also have a little bit of a reverb going on. Just Ableton stock reverb, basically cut out all the lows, and just to give it a little bit of ambient sound, I guess, a little bit of room sound. I felt it sounded quite dry without that, and I usually add a little bit of reverb to my bass sounds. It just adds more interest to the sound, and that's a great thing to do. Then the last thing I did on the whole bass sound is I wanted to add a little bit more interest towards the end of the bass sound. So and what I decided to do is play around with something I almost never play around with, and that's the grain delay inside Ableton Live. Now the grain delay is really interesting because you can sort of like get kind of granular kind of textures with it, and I decided to do a bunch of stuff. Let me see. These two automation lanes are the automation lanes for the grain delay. The top one is the dry wet. So on the start of the sound we don't get any of the grain delay, and towards the end of the sound we get more and more of that grain delay. Then the second automation right here is the frequency. Yeah, it's the frequency of the grain delay. So I'm moving this frequency down, which means that the delay sound, the actual delayed signal, will get not the delayed signal, but the delay itself. So the speed of the delay is being determined by the frequency. So if we bring that down, the speed of the delay itself will slow down. And because we're using grain delay, you get a really interesting sound. So I can show you this with the grain delay. So that's with, and this without. See? Just get that quite interesting sound. That's basically it for the whole patch. Now, you basically get two patches in one with this one, because without the filtering, it still sounds like a pretty good bass. It's actually a really heavy bass as well, so you could use this in a really heavy track or add some filtering to make it a bit lighter. So that's it, there you have it. It's a pretty interesting sound. This is actually the 4th video too this week. I'm trying to do 1 video a day. And so far, so good. So that's pretty nice. If you have an idea for the other videos coming this week, please let me know. Or if you want to know something about a particular subject, then just let me know in the comments below, or go to my website, which is now online, www.artfx-studios.com. On there you can find all my videos, of course. You can find links to all the different seasons that I did on my YouTube channel. You can find links to my music. You can find a whole bunch of stuff. You can find products for music producers. And right now you can find a forum for music producers right there. A forum where I actually answer all your questions, where you can post your music, and I'll try to give you feedback if I think I have something valuable to say. And yeah, other than that, it's just a great place to meet new people. And that's what it's all about. Help each other get better, and that's what we do. Peace.